ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. Happy holidays, everyone. Now, just to say thank you and to give a little bit back, a little bit of a gift we're gonna do, and we're gonna squeeze in a last episode where I critique your designs. I hope you enjoy it. And for all of you who commented, I wanna see Frank at his desk and I wanna see Frank with a pen in his hand, well, you've got your wish. Now let's have a rummage into Santa's sack. First one is from Nikos Kurkulkas. Nikos is 40 years old. Nick, thanks so much for sending this in. On first impressions, I like the stance and the perspective of the car. You've shown it in a way that at first viewing, it tells you everything you need to know about the feeling that you want to achieve with this car. It's got the face, it's got the side profile integrated in there, so you can look at it and say, okay, I get the feeling, I get the understanding of basically that element that we're trying to capture, which is the stance and the proportions and the character of the car. So you've done that very well. Perhaps the only thing I'm regretting a little bit is the fact that the car looks very conventional, very traditional in a way. It doesn't seem like it's achieving any level of modernity or even anything close to being futuristic. I know that sounds harsh, but at the same time, when we design a car, we're always, as designers, trying to push the limits, push the boundaries, push through what is conventional or seen as conventional today. So with all the solutions I'm seeing that you've incorporated in this front three-quarter view, there's nothing on it that really pops out and says to me, this is the future of car design, or this is the future of design in the automotive industry. Now, from a technique point of view, like I said at the very beginning, your perspective is great. There's hardly any flaws at all. Let's just start at the front and look at it. What you've done here is pretty much block in a car. This is very much the type of drawing you would use to, for example, for a child's coloring book, you would use solid black lines to outline the shape of the car. All your lines are very stiff, very, very consistently dark, going from front to back, the same intensity, which tends to make the sketch very flat. There's no sense of depth to your sketch, which is achieved simply by making the closer lines darker, the lines that go towards the rear of the vehicle become fainter, become less noticeable, less strong, less intense. Lines that just start hard and a bit more defined and fade just like that. You can see the line starts strong, a little bit darker, and as you go towards the rear, you're letting the pen go off the page and you're getting this dark to light feeling of the line itself. That will help to improve this sketch enormously. There's a little bit of shading here on the glass. It doesn't show the see-through condition that normally you would have with glass. So that glass has a degree of gloss, and at the same time, it has transparency. So those are two factors that you haven't achieved in your sketch here. Sounds like it's starting to snow. Another area that really stands out for me is the constant use of black in a solid form. Your shadow underneath, for example, here, is the same grade from here, from the front back to the rear. Now, a shadow, as it disappears away from you, it's going to be darker towards you and lighter as it goes away. Same way as it goes underneath the car in the opposite direction. You're using pretty much the same grade of intensity of the shadow here in the front. And nothing really behind the car, so that means your source of light is coming from this way. Theoretically, if you're doing this with a source of lighting coming from behind the car, you would sort of give it more of a projected shadow that basically works more like that, perhaps, to be a little bit more dramatic, as we say. That always adds a little bit of emotion to the vehicle. So you want the shadow really to set the car off the page. Now, the other thing that you're missing a lot on here is reflections. I would say your car is matte here because there are no high reflections or any signs of gloss. What we do is use reflections on the side of the vehicle, oftentimes to show the curvature, the intensity of the light on the surface, the direction of the light. We also use it to show the amount of curvature that the surface itself has. So for example, you would take about the widest point of the surface, it's usually around the middle of the door, and that would be your horizon line, what we call the horizon line that is reflecting from the side of the car or behind you as the viewer into the side of the vehicle. And that line can be fairly hard because the horizon tends to be a sharpish line, whereas above that horizon line, you're going to have the sunset or the light coming down to the horizon, and above that area, then you start to get the blues of the sky, you get the cooler colors. So what you want to do is bring in the soft tones that you have here down so that they just float basically above that area there. Now, one way I do it is I just use a very, very light, almost a sky blue marker, and I go in with a sky blue marker and then basically add a little bit of darker color perhaps on top of it to give you the effect of the color of the car, and just let it fade to white as you get just over the horizon. Now, keep it light and build up slowly till you get the right intensity. What is the right intensity? That's up for you to decide, but remember, it's always better to work a little bit lighter and progress to the darker phase. Don't bite too much of the apple at the beginning. Okay, Nick, there you have it. I know you're an older designer, so I don't want to patronize you. You have loads of talent, I can see it here, but you do need to be poked and prodded a little bit. It's a challenge to get to the next level, but you need to know that there are a few things that will take you to that level, and I hope this has helped you to prepare you a little bit in that direction, and hope to see some improvement in the future. Second one. The second one is from Yash Yadav. Yash is 17 years old. This is what I'm talking about. Yash, this is great. Right off the bat, first impression, you've got something that expresses with your technique, mostly, something that's exciting, dynamic, emotional, everything that we look for in a sketch. Obviously, it has a few issues with it in terms of making it a real car, but we never start out drawing a real car. We always start out with something that stirs the soul, that sort of makes you want to investigate something a little bit more. And what you've done here is create something that, bam, my eyes have opened up. I like it very much. I don't know exactly what's going on. We'll get into there, but what I can see is something that you've sketched with perhaps lightning speed. I don't think it's taken you a long time to draw it. It's one of those sketches that captures a lot of dynamic movement to it. Now, you've done that by being able to use flowing lines, very fast lines, and that's a good technique at your age to learn. Too many designers, young designers, tend to spend a long time on a line. Now, what I mean by that is that you spend the time doing a line very similar to that, when the way to do that line is like that. So you're doing that with your sketch. You're getting speed into the sketch. You do have huge wheels with perhaps rubber bands attached around them as a profile. We joke about that a lot of times. We try to get cars having minimal profile tires. Doesn't really work in the real world, but it looks cool. Just remember that when you're going to do the sketch, that you're always going to need some type of clearance between the edge of the wheel and the top of the fender. So this clearance here is absolutely ridiculous. You need to have some meat above the center of the front wheel, some surfacing. So raise that line, obviously. It's not going to be real unless you do that. Next thing is you've got a lot of motion, obviously, what I said to your sketch, but you get problems when you create too much emotion, too much excitement in the sketch. You have to remember somebody's going to be sitting in here. What we're looking at is something that would perhaps have more than 2.5 wheels distance, perhaps because you're using such large wheels. If you were coming down to say, let's say a 22-inch wheel or a 20-inch wheel, you're probably going to be able to say the proportions are a little bit more real. So you see there's 3 wheels distance between them now. That's pretty accurate. So that can help you to set the proportion of the wheels to the body side. You always want, or at least I always try, to bring in some section lines, some door cut lines to show you basically the layout of the vehicle. Now, I don't know where you have them here. You don't really show them visibly, but I would imagine you got something perhaps like that, perhaps coming through like that. And what that will help you do is show you more or less where the door is on the section of the car, on the side of the car. And that gives you sort of a proportional layout to it. Helps sometimes to increase the readability of the theme of the car. And yeah, you're starting to get a sketch there that can develop into something very, very nice. As a start, again, it's very emotional, a very emotional sketch, which I like very much. It doesn't show me a lot of detail. Add reflections to show more or less what is happening on the body side. It's kind of hard to read what your intention is without having a reflection on the body side, okay? So that is quite important. But good start. Keep challenging yourself. You've already got a good start, a good grasp of line quality, which is critical in car design. Line quality is one of the main things that is very difficult to learn at the beginning, but as you get quicker, as you get more confident with your sketching styles, you're just going to naturally develop line quality to an nth degree, and it's going to look a lot more professional. And the best thing I think that you've accomplished here is that quick style, that rapid sketching style that makes it so much more professional. So great, you've got potential, kid. You're only 17 and you're going places. So keep it up. Let's see what else Santa has supplied from our amazing subscribers. This one is from Alex Apugliese. I bet my hat that Alex is from Italy. Now, Alex has sketched a car which on first impression is a Lamborghini, and then when I read about it, it is a Lamborghini. So well done, Alex, for getting a car design on paper that immediately, inherently recognizable as what Lamborghini has been doing in the past, and shifting it a little bit into the future. Now, what you wanted to do, you say here, is make it appear like it could be in the Lamborghini lineup in the next decade or so. So let's examine that from a more critical point of view, more so than from a sketching point of view, because you obviously love the sketch. I can see a few perspective issues. You're always going to have that issue until you actually get trained in depth in perspective. That's always going to be very difficult. Cars are the hardest thing in the world to draw, and to learn the perspective of drawing something so complicated as a car is not going to happen overnight. It's just practice, practice, practice. In terms of trying to make this car look like a Lamborghini, let's see some of the issues that you've tried to accomplish here. The reason why I do see this immediately as being a Lamborghini is because you've done this, or at least it looks like you've done this. And then you've done this. So I think you're getting the idea that basically the form language or surface language or the design language of a Lamborghini typically in the last few years, I guess, or the last few decades, perhaps even after the Miura, has been very much an origami type of design where you basically fold metal and you create these very crisp, very hard edges. What you have here is a very angular car, very Lamborghini deswegen. That's German. That's why. And I think it comes across, like you said, as a Lamborghini. But I think you have a few issues with making this car look futuristic. If you're saying that you would love this car to be in Lamborghini's lineup in 10 years, in a decade or so, well, then you better start rethinking headlights, because these headlights came out 20 years ago, maybe even more. These wheels, my gosh, I think I did those back in the 70s, 80s maybe. There's not a lot new going on that can make me think this is a futuristic car. The only thing I see on this car, which reminds me a little bit more perhaps of the Stratos, the Lancia Stratos, is the amount of curvature you have in your front windscreen. amount of curvature in the front windscreen, today, that much is impossible. But then again, Alex, if you're gonna do that kind of curvature here in the front glass area, on the windscreen, push it. Get the engineers to go along for the ride with you. Find a way to do it. Maybe it's a different material than glass. I mean, it doesn't always have to be glass. Race cars don't use glass because of the dangers of using it, but there are other materials that are going to be coming along in the future. So if you want that glass to have that amount of wrap, do it. Push the engineers. Understand that it's going to be a headache, a huge headache for them to come up with a solution, but it can be done. And then, if you're going to do something like that, introduce it as a design feature somewhere else in the vehicle where you have an impossible amount of wrap as well in the body surfacing. So I know you're going for very angular surfaces, but perhaps as the vehicle goes to the rear, perhaps you start to introduce curvature to the rear, or perhaps to the front. It can be very aero-like, very, very curved to the front. And you can almost have something like that, which has been done by Lamborghini. If you look into their concept cars in the last few years, they've done very pointed front ends. Check out some things that Walter de Silva has actually done with that kind of plan view. There isn't a lot of dramaticness to your design. It looks like a Lamborghini, like I said, but is there anything on here that I haven't seen before? Probably not. And that is something that you need to think as a young designer, what can I bring in? Besides, for example, extreme curvature to the glass, like we said, the Lancia Stratos had this, so it's not really that new. But what you want to do is probably come up with something that is dramatic in terms of, let's call it entry-exit. When you come up to the car, the door opens in a very unusual way. We know a lot of manufacturers are doing this. Probably one of the least interesting ones today is Ferrari. But if you're going to do something with a Lamborghini, you want those doors to do something that no other door does in the history of car design. And the way to do that here, at least to convince the engineer that you have a great idea, is to show the door on the opposite side open. Bring something into the sketch that makes the engineer's eyes go boom and his heart go boom. And then you're going to be creating something that is Lamborghini-esque in terms of immense emotional pleasure when you see something like this on the road. So keep going, Alex. You're young, I can tell, but you've got a grip on automotive design, and you just need to start thinking a little bit more of being, if it's a Lamborghini, of being extreme in your design. And finally, Santa has sent a sketch from Shreyas Thakare. Shreyas, I don't know how old you are or where you're from, but thank you so much for submitting this one. First thing I notice on your sketch here is that you have a feeling, a good feeling of reinterpreting, reincarnating a McLaren for the next generation. So I'm looking at something that I can understand, that is, again, immediately recognizable for its heritage and for its the mark, the brand that you're trying to reinterpret. Whether that's a good thing or not, I can't tell you, because all I am geared to do from a designer point of view, what I've been trying to do all my life, is to innovate. That is the problem perhaps in this sketch here, that you're not scaring me with enough innovation. It's another feel perhaps for a McLaren, but does it bring anything new to the game? Now, what I've always said is that designers need to push the limits. That's what they're paying you the big bucks for. What you need to do is understand that when you sketch a car, that the person looking at it who wants to put this into their future lineup or strategy of design are going to be looking for something that moves the game on. I don't think, hard as it may sound, Shreyas, that you've pushed the ball, pushed the game far enough onwards with your design. It's just a new look, or a different look, or a fresh look perhaps, but nothing that tells me that from a designer point of view, you've come up with something that is a worthwhile step into the future for a company of, let's call it the caliber of McLaren, who are always trying to innovate, always trying to push the boundaries of technology. You've just got something here that basically looks like another choice for a car like that. You have a very, very tall car here in relation to the width of the car. Now, tall in itself isn't bad, but you need to bring width with it if you're going to do a car that is of a sporty heritage. So your car is too narrow. Now, why do I say that? Because I can see that from here and here and here and here, your track of the car in the back is more narrow than the track of your car in the front, which is from here, here, and you can see that that distance is larger than that distance there. Your distance between the rear wheels, the track from side to side, is always going to be a little bit larger, at least in perspective, than what you see on the front one. So either I would actually just pull the rear wheel more in this direction, give it more apparent width or track in the back. If you're going to make the car appear wider, you want to lower that roof and give it a much lower roof than what you're showing here, just so that it squats a little bit more. Sports cars don't tend to be tall, they tend to be wide and low. That's the thing of sports cars. It gets that dynamic, low, hugging the road kind of feeling to it. So you got to get that through into your proportions. You're missing that here. Another thing here that's a little bit confusing is the way the perspective is showing the car to be almost twisted in the opposite way. Not twisted that way, but twisted in a concave way, which means that your ellipses are okay, but not in relation to each other. In other words, if you're going to do, say, I don't know if that's maybe it's a 25-degree ellipse there. Usually you add on 15 degrees. So if you're running a 25, or let's say it's a 20, add 15, you're going to have a 35-degree ellipse in the front if you're not turning the wheel, obviously. So go for something that's a little bit more wider in the front, and that will give you the right sense of, depending on the perspective, but generally in a 3/4 like this, you're going to have a 15-degree ellipse change from front to back. That means the ellipse, minor axis of the ellipse is going to be a little bit wider in the front compared to the rear. So open up that wheel there. You can see you've tried to reinterpret, or at least give some kind of recognition factor to the headlights to make them look a little bit McLaren. There's nothing new there. If you look at the jump we made from the P1 to the 720S headlights, that was a dramatic change. Whether it was better or not, doesn't matter. It was different. It was just effective, or even more effective on the 720S, because we had intake and lights in one area, one common area, and it worked very well. And it also gave quite a bit of a new character to McLaren, as well as making it look a little bit more sinister in a certain way on the 720S. So innovation is coming along all the time that will allow you to do things that are basically impossible today. So push those limits. I don't see anything really innovative on the design here. So you have to do something that makes you think, okay, this is different, and this is different for a good reason, not just different to be different. That is another big mistake that a lot of designers have today, is different to be different. That's not design. Different to be better is good design. You have good technique. Shreyas, you've come in with a sketch that basically looks like you love using your pencil. You understand a little bit about shading, about shapes and forms. You just have to turn the notch up a little bit more and make the sketches look a little bit more, I wouldn't say unrealistic, but at least pushing the boundaries of what is possible today. Just don't think that McLaren or any other company will hire you because you can draw a car that looks like it belongs to them. They're going to hire you for some innovation ideas that rock the boat, something that basically comes in from left field and makes them think, wow, we never came at it from this angle. We never thought about it like this. This could be very interesting. He has unique ideas. He's a thinking man. He's got ideas that he can actually substantiate with perhaps a way to do it. Maybe it's not the ultimate way to do it or the right way to do it, but at least you're not designing for design's sake. You're designing for improvement and efficiency. So good luck, Shreyas. Thank you for sending it in. Many thanks, because I can see you have talent. You just need to be pushed a little bit more, encouraged to do a little bit more forward thinking, and you're going to get there one day. Thanks, Shreyas. And that's it. That's a wrap for this episode. That's a wrap for this year. Thank you so much to all of you for subscribing, for the amazing year that we've had this year. for all of your support, for all of your great comments that I've really enjoyed reading this year. So many thanks from myself and from the whole FSD team. We really enjoyed doing this year. We're going to have a fantastic year next year with a lot of super exciting projects next year. And for all of you who have made it this far in the video, keep your eyes peeled for Boxing Day, the 26th of December, when we're going to be releasing, let's say, a very entertaining episode, specially made for you. Happy holidays. See you soon.